Hello YouTube and welcome back to another Dare to Game video. Today we're playing Red Dead Online and we're doing another weapon customization video. Today we're doing the double-action revolver, which has been widely requested across the channel. So this is definitely a gun that some people love and some people hate. It's got a super great fire rate and a really fast reload speed, but it's one of the least powerful and most inaccurate of revolvers in the game. Basically, if you're going to use it, the way I recommend doing it is definitely dual wielding and making sure you have the Gunslinger's Choice ability card. Otherwise, it's basically useless. If you use the dual wielded Gunslinger's Choice combo though, it's actually a pretty decent gun. So with all that in mind, before we get into the customization, let's do just a little bit of background information on this pretty decent weapon. The double-action revolver in Red Dead Online is based off the real-life Colt M1892 Navy and Army revolvers, and they were the first general-issue double-action revolver with a swing-out cylinder used by the US military. In 1892, the revolver was adopted by the United States Army, chambered for 38 long Colt cartridges, and was given the appellation New Army and Navy. Initial experience with the gun caused officials to request some improvements. This would be an ongoing condition, resulting in models 1892, 94, 96, and 1901, and then finally 1903 for the Army, as well as the model 1895 for the Navy and the model 1905 Marine Corps variant. The revolver featured a counterclockwise rotating cylinder, which would be opened for loading and ejection by simply pulling back a catch mounted on the left side of the frame behind the recoil shield. It was easily manipulated by the thumb of the right hand, and upon release, the cylinder could be poked out sideways with the shooter's forefinger. Empty cases were removed by simply pushing back on the ejector rod to activate a star extractor. The 6-shooter could then be quickly reloaded and the cylinder clicked back into place. The sights were the basic rounded front blade and top strap notch. The finish on all military revolvers was blued steel, though civilian guns could be nickeled or even some other special finishing like gold plating or enameled steel. The M1892's counterclockwise cylinder rotation tended to force the cylinder out of alignment with the frame over time, and this was exacerbated by relatively weak lock work used to time or match individual chambers to the barrel. In 1908, Colt improved and strengthened the lock work and changed the cylinder rotation to a clockwise movement. A model 1892 revolver was recovered from the USS Maine after it exploded in Havana Harbor in 1898. It was presented to then Assistant Secretary of the Navy, Theodore Roosevelt, who would later become President of the United States. Roosevelt brandished the pistol to rally his Rough Riders during the famed charge up San Juan Hill on July 1st, 1898. This revolver was on display at Sagamore Hill and was stolen from there in 1963, recovered, and then stolen again in 1990. It was recovered in 2006 and returned to Sagamore Hill on June 14th, 2006. This revolver was thought of as a decent handgun for its time, but complaints arose from the military concerning the revolver's cartridge chambering. Beginning in 1899, combat reports arose from the Philippines campaign regarding the poor performance of the M1892's 38 caliber ammunition. Specifically, users complained that the 38 bullet repeatedly failed to stop charging Filipino rebels at close ranges, even when hit multiple times. The complaints caused the US Army to hurriedly issue stocks of 45 caliber revolvers, and played a central role in its decision to replace the M1892 with the 45 Colt M1909 new service revolver in 1909. In a rush to furnish arms to the rapidly expanding Army and Navy after the United States entered World War I, surplus stocks of these old Colts were inspected, refurbished as needed, and then issued to rear echelon Army troops and Navy officers as a substitute standard sidearm. All the way up through World War I, this revolver was actually used by the United States Army. So for our first design today, we have what I like to call the Fancy Dan. And so for this one, we're going to need the ironwood grips with the mesquite finish, the short barrel, improved sights, improved rifling, and then we're going to do full engravings, and it's going to be the Art Nouveau style with gold inlay, gold metal inlay. No carving on the grip. But then we're going to take it into here, and the metal choices are going to be nickel plating for the trigger, sight, the hammer, and the cylinder, and then black and steel for the barrel and the frame. I think this design definitely looks pretty fancy. It's one of the best designs. Well, I mean, all these 5 are the ones that I like the most for this, obviously, because they're the top 5 designs I could come up with for the double-action revolver. But this is one of the nicer, fancy designs that I was able to come up with for someone who really likes the double action but wants their gun to look a little bit flashy, maybe, or like they're really into their guns. That's what I was thinking when I designed this one. I think the broader strokes in the engraving with the thick gold inlays pops out really well against the black and steel, and then that contrasts decently well against the nickel finish. So like the cylinder, the hammer, the sight, and the trigger are all nickel plated. I think that goes really well against the nice darker color of the main body of the gun. So this is one of those instances where I think the alternating color for the cylinder actually looks pretty nice on the gun. And of course the gold inlay stands out decently well against the nickel, but really well against the black. And of course all that contrasting against the nice reddish dark finish of the varnish on the grip. I think that looks really nice. Now the double action revolver is limited in what you can do with it because you cannot gold plate the metal and you cannot use a pearl grip because they wanted to make the the unique variant that you could get for doing, I forget what it was, but something in GTA Online. They wanted to make that really unique so people couldn't just imitate it. So that's why we don't have gold plating for the metal, and that's why we don't have a pearl grip for it. But I still think we can do some decent designs, and the Fancy Dan is the first one that I wanted to show you today. So let's move on to the next. So for our second design today, we have what I like to call the blueberry, and I don't know if that makes a lot of sense to everyone else, but it's the design, or it's the name that I thought of first when I designed this one. Mostly because the specific lighting, now the guns always look slightly different under all the lighting, but this gun, when you've got it out on you and in a slightly darker lighting, most of the time, it looks a little bit more like metallic. The brown steel looks a little bit more metallic, so that contrasting against the blue reminded me of a blueberry. So that's where the name comes from. But for this one, we're going to want ebony grips, and then the short barrel, improved rifling, improved sights. We're going to want to carve nothing into the grip, but for the gun, we're going to want to engrave the Victorian style on everything except for the cylinder. And then we're going to want to put the brown inlay, the brown steel inlay into that engraving. And that'll help it look like this. Then for the metals, we're going to use blued steel for the barrel and the frame, and then brown steel for the cylinder, the hammer, the sight, and the trigger. So again, we're going to have an alternating color for the cylinder and all the accent parts, the trigger, sight, and the hammer. And the main body is going to be all blued steel. I think the brown steel contrasts really nice, and I think the double action revolver, at least in my opinion, looks the best in these darker colors. Now there are some lighter designs that I like, but I think the darker colors look really good on the double action revolver just because of the way that it's designed. And I left the engraving off the cylinder to keep the cylinder looking nice and clean because I think it just pops out a little bit better. With the engraving on it, it still looks decent because it's still the brown steel engraving, so it doesn't clash or anything. It just doesn't look as neat and well finished as it does if you don't engrave the cylinder. So that is the blueberry design. Like I said, I like how it looks. I think it's pretty understated, and this is going to be one that a lot of people who don't like their guns to be very flashy, I think those people are going to like this design. But that is number 2. All right, for the third design, we have what I'm calling the Big Brass Band. And now I can't remember if I ever called another design the Big Brass Band. For some reason, when I was naming this, I was like, I think I did that one already. But I couldn't recall for sure, so I called it that anyway. This one is obviously going to have, brass being an obvious element in its design, and that's where the name comes from. For this one, you're going to want to do short barrel, improved rifling, improved sights, ebony grip. Again, we're not going to carve anything into the grip, but we're going to do the Victorian style engraving over the entire gun, and we're going to put the blued steel inlay into that because that's going to pop out really nice. So then for the metals that make up the gun, we have brass for the barrel, cylinder, and frame, and then blued steel for the hammer, sight, and trigger, costing us a total of 9 gold bars. So actually not very expensive to design your double action this way. And it looks really nice in my opinion. I mean, if we just look at it not zoomed in, you can see the engraving popping out even better. So that's one of the nice things about the double action is the entire both sides of the frame are engraved all the way along with whatever engraving you do, all the way down and around the butt of the gun. So it's actually really intricate when you look at it, and I just think this design looks really, really nice. Again, since gold isn't an option, brass is probably the flashiest thing you can do on a double action revolver, and the best contrast against brass, at least in my opinion, is going to be that either blued steel or blackened steel. I went with blued in this one, and then that nice ebony grip. I just think the whole altogether, it looks really nice. It's a versatile design. It looks kind of flashy, but also because it's brass and not gold, it does look a little bit more subdued than what a lot of people are rocking. I think this design is classic and timeless for a reason, because it looks really good. So that's number 3. Let's move on to the 4th design. So here for our 4th design, we've got one that I probably rock most often for these guns, and I call this one the Silver Serpent. I considered the Silver Surfer, but I didn't want to get caught with copyright infringement. So for this one, we did the improved rifling, improved sights, ebony grips, and the long barrel. I think the long barrel looks better with this design. I carved a snake into it because it's a serpent, so that just checks out. Then I did full engravings with silver inlay, and then for the metals, I did the barrel, cylinder, and frame all silver plated, and then the hammer, sight, and trigger are all iron plated. So total cost for this one of 12 gold bars, and honestly, I think it looks really, really nice. This is one of the few guns where I can stand the like unevenness of the silver plating because it just looks nice and shiny. It's got that nice clean metallic finish, and the silver engraving, it doesn't pop out because it's silver on silver, but it gives it kind of a darker textured look to it, which is obvious because you are texturing it with the engraving, and I just think it looks really nice. So if we just kind of go along what it looks like. So on the frame there, it looks like that real bad in the store, the frame and the cylinder, but once you get outside and you've got your gun like this, it looks much more, it just kind of looks shiny and cool. So that's one of the reasons why I actually like the full inox type of look on a double-action revolver in this game. I mean, you tell me what you think, but I really like that design. I know it's classic, and it kind of, if you squint at it, it just looks like a much more modern 44 Magnum or something like that. That's kind of what it looks like to me, so that's why I like this design so much. So that is the fourth design, the Silver Serpent. Let's move on to the fifth and final design for the double-action revolver. All right, so at number 5, we have the Gilded Blue Steel. And so for this one, I mean, you're going to notice that this is matching one of my favorite color schemes in the game as best as we can, and it just looks awesome. So for this one, we're going to be doing the long barrel, improved rifling, improved sights, the basic wood grips, and then we're going to give those the myrtle finish, and we're going to carve a cougar into it. Then we're going to want to have full engraving with gold inlay. The style doesn't really matter. I just went with this one because I kind of like the way it looks the best. It gives you the most gold, whatever you want to call it, gold per square inch on your gun that's available. And since gold accents aren't an option on the double action, the best we can do is brass to offset that. So this one is going to be for metals. We have blued steel for the barrel, cylinder, and frame, brass for the hammer, sight, and trigger. And I think it works really, really well. Yes, you can't have gold, but I think the brass looks really nice, and you can do the gold engraving, so I think it works. It works in its own way. This one should have a total cost of 9 gold bars to make. I already own the hammer and brass, so it slightly throws off the price, but it's so for that, it's not very expensive. I think this design looks pretty dang nice. I think all of them turned out really good, especially considering the limitations that the double-action revolver has. You let me know down in the comment section which one of these was your favorite. Thanks for watching another Dare to Game video. If you like this video, please leave a like and a comment. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the channel. If you like my content and would like to support this channel, consider becoming a member today for as little as $1.99 a month. It makes a huge difference. But in any case, thanks for watching and have a nice day. I'll see you next time.